Hello, everybody. So good to be with you. I am reporting in as not being dead for the second time this week, which is very encouraging, is it not? We are going to continue our conversation on bhakti and non-duality and to explore that. There are lots of ways we could go. I'm going to suggest that we go back to the first line of my first book, which was Beyond Recovery, Non-Duality, and the 12 Steps. And the first line of that book, when I sat down to write it, just was so clear. And it was just, there's just one thing going on. And I've had people write me and come to satsang and ask me, or in private session or whatever, and they'll say, I just never understood that part of your teaching. What do you mean by there's just one thing going on? And to get an idea of what I'm talking about there, we could go to Meister Eckhart. Meister Eckhart was a Catholic mystic teacher in the late 1200s and early 1300s, so late 13th century, very early 14th. He did not have a long life. I think he lived in his 40s or something. At that time, God reeled him back in, I guess, however you want to look at it. So what Meister Eckhart said was that if I don't see God everywhere, I don't see God anywhere. And what he was saying is there's just one thing going on. If I don't see God everywhere, then I can't see God anywhere. God is not something we're pursuing, it's something that we are. And this has nothing to do with any sense of individuality. This has nothing to do with any egoic puffery. I can claim to be God, but so can you. We'd both be right. God cannot claim to be anything because there's just it. That's all there is. There's it, and there's nothing beyond it to understand it or come to merge with it. It set me laughing more than once. And because what is there outside of oneness that could ever come to merge with oneness? There's only oneness. There's nothing else. So this is, just as a recap, this is oneness talking to oneness via oneness, these implements. And show a little quick note from Betsy Hackett Davis, which I'll read when we're done with this. The oneness is talking to oneness, and the only thing that we can talk about is oneness because that's all there is. That's it. You may have seen books, or I know that there are some non-dual books out there that the famous one is I am that. And what he means when I'm that is what he's talking about is this. Because there's neither this nor that. I just call it this, he called it that, which was the unknown. But it creates the idea of separation is the problem. And I'm correcting one of the great masters of non-duality, Nisargadatta Maharaj, who I admire to the bottom of my toes. But sometimes in language, he and I will see some things exactly right. And sometimes we will not see things exactly right. And when we don't see things exactly the same way, I vote for the way it comes through here because it's more recent. It's more likely. It's more recent within relativity. It's outside of all this is outside of time itself because there is no time. But this sense of individuality is what throws us. And what we can certainly say about these things is that they are born or no, not born actually, but they grow up with the seemingly no need to be managed or watered or fed or anything else. They're born with the notion, the false notion, that they are individuals, which is what is causing all the trouble on this planet right now. Even the global warming, all the wars, every last bit of starving. These are huge problems within relativity, and they can't be ignored successfully. You can try, but you'll just end up being cold and hard. And I've already been there, and I've had my fill of it. Thank you. So the one thing going on is this. So when I look at the monitor, I see a monitor, but I also know that it's me, not Fred, but me, with a capital M, if you will, or I, as some people like to do it. I know that it is I, because there is I alone. And I can't be honest with you, that doesn't even make sense to me, because I can't find an I. It's not like God is some sort of entity, which I have now recognized that God is an entity, and that I am He, and that I am in the high chair, and you are not. Their hierarchy is just out in non-duality. It really is. There's a relative hierarchy, which sometimes works, but mostly works against us. But in non-duality, there's no hierarchy at all. An ant is equally God as this is. And so is a tree or a plant, or the most disgusting worm or fungus or virus or whatever. It's all God. And we call it wrong because we view it from an individual standpoint. We certainly can view what's happening with the planet. We can say that it is not skillful, but we can't really call it wrong, because then we'd have to compare it to something in order to have something that was wrong. And it has no comparison. This is it. There is no comparison to this. There's no more is, there's no less is, there's no up this or down this, or all of that's out the window. So it gets very confusing right quickly. I talked to a young woman yesterday who had woken up spontaneously, and she had come to see me, and she woke up a year ago, 11 months ago. She woke up in October of last year. She did so on her own. She didn't need a Fred Davis to wake up, because nobody does, but the sense is that they do. So it keeps the lights on here. But she did come to see if there was something here that can help her with greater clarity. And she suggested that had occurred during that session, and it was clear to me as well. So we both agreed. But my God, at some point I'm going to have to publish her letter anonymously, because it was the best email I ever got, a request a session. You could tell she was doing really well by way of the email. But we can be doing really well and still move further, still be clearer, still become more stable. Stability is really a key here. So, and stability starts out at 51%. And we could say, and at 51%, you are now more stable than you are unstable. And that 51% can rapidly move up. The last 10% are, well, who knows? I say the last 10% just because I'm talking math. But it doesn't end. There's no such thing as 100%, because there's no such thing as graduation from this, because there's only this. And that's what we really, really, really want to see. So the idea that, I have students who have been with me for years, and they are quite clear. They don't need me to help them wake up. That happened years ago. They come because, number one, they enjoy it, and number two, probably because there's a deep sense of love between the units, so to speak. It's God loving God, and there's that resonation of God loving God. But notice that God has nothing else to love but itself. Because there is nothing else but itself. I keep saying this, but that's because repetition is the mother of clarity. I had a student tell me one day that it's also the mother of confusion, which, I couldn't argue with that either. But here we're just saying that repetition is the mother of clarity, because that's the way it seems to be here. And when I say here, I'm indicating that I loved the way that this woman yesterday spoke of the sense of individuality, and she would say, she called it the weather system, and it's perfect. And I often compete, we'll point out the emptiness of tornadoes and hurricanes and stuff like this, but just the idea that it's a weather system, that this is a weather system, which means it's always moving. There's no way to grab it and have it and hold it, because you can't do that, because there's no I to do it, and there's no way to grab a weather system. You enjoy it or you endure it, and then it moves on. But what I want you to do is I want you to start loving yourself. Now, you can't see yourself, you don't think, but in fact, you can only see yourself. This Buddha just appears, it's just an appearance. It's an appearance within space, which is all kind of beyond me, but it's an appearance. It's not it, and you can knock on the wood, and it sounds like it's really there. There's a solid Buddha there. And within relativity, if you drop that thing on its toe, your toe is going to swell and it's going to hurt. That is still no evidence that there is actually a Buddha there. There's an appearance of a Buddha. There's an experience of a Buddha. There's a sense of a Buddha statue. But the sense of something doesn't necessarily mean the truth of something. What it means is there is a Buddha statue within relativity. We are experiencing a Buddha statue within relativity. We're experiencing a skull or a statue, a statuette within relativity, or a book cover or whatever. But that doesn't mean that these things are actually separate. Because again, we are not talking about sameness. We're talking about oneness. Now, see, I ran across in another book of philosophy or theology or something that I was looking through yesterday, and they said, there's only this sameness, and that person could not be more wrong. They have not yet, they're either speaking incorrectly about something that they do know, or they are, or they're simply incorrect overall. And I personally, I don't know which way it goes. There's no reason for me to judge myself in another body, and what I might or might not know in another body. Who cares? But it is important to recognize that it's not sameness, that oneness is actually diversity. There is the I've forgotten, Ramesh Balsekar had so many great terms for this, but this sense of many, and the truth of singular, the one. Until you start to notice that what you're seeking for is what you are, that the observer is the observed, and the observed is the observer. There's no difference. There's a difference in appearance. So within relativity, this body doesn't display the same as that one. This body looks like it's fat on screen, but it's really not. It's lost a lot of weight during illness, but it still shows up as being fat in a t-shirt. Of course, there's vanity here, even though there's no Fred to be vain or to be vain about. Vanity arises. See, it's not a doing, it's a happening. Vanity arises. Talking is happening. So-called teaching is happening. But, you know, when you're teaching yourself, how much teaching is really going on? It's a sense of teaching, and there's a sense of learning and a sense of discovery and finding out, and a sense of not getting it or having lost it or forgotten it or all this and that. There's just one thing going on, see? So you have to recognize that every one of those thoughts is part of this. And that this actually could be, if we, the Fred unit and that unit, this is not their dream. The thing that you could say that the Fred unit and that unit are the dream, by which it means that there's just one thing going on. There's God here. God's experiencing himself through this unit and that unit. Did I say himself? God, please forgive me. You know, I'm an old man, and I came up speaking a certain language, and they changed it on me brilliantly and properly, and they have changed it. I have no quarrel with it whatsoever. Nonetheless, I do tend to speak in an old-fashioned way, which means that I am there's a name for it too, but anyway, I'm biased toward men, guys, just biased in language. I'm not biased at all. See, here it is. There's oneness talking to oneness. Oneness can confess that it's coming through this unit. This unit is not other than oneness, but it is within relativity. It is a different appearance of oneness. And what this unit is conditioning. And what comes out of the mouth can't be other than truth as spoken through conditioning. And then it's got to reach your side, so to speak, as if they're two. And it's got to be, truth will be translated through that conditioning. Not more than one thing. Just keep that in mind. But there is the appearance, there is the experience of a multitude. So we have to come to grips with that, and you'll never actually grab this. The infinity can't be grabbed, certainly not by a finite character. Something that, the only thing that exists can't be grasped by something that doesn't truly exist, which is a Fred Davis. And this body only exists within relativity, so it's not true either. But I'm trying to communicate with myself because I notice that there is suffering and misunderstanding on a wide basis. And actually, with this planet of 8 billion people, we have got nearly 8 billion people who believe that they are separate. So what is important is their self-service, is their self-satisfaction, their self-discovery. And by doing this, by dividing by dividing this into different individuals, then it tends to just tear itself up to where it can't recognize itself. The skies are heated up, and this is in relativity on planet Earth. But this is the experience. We don't want to be denying our experience. I don't want to be part of any philosophy that denies its own experience. And this